Hey everyone, this is darkfireslide here with part 6 of our EU4 tutorial campaign. Last episode we covered the difference between cores and claims and how to use them as casus bellis to attack other countries without incurring penalties. I recall that I forgot to mention why not having a casus belli is a bad thing. Now we talked about stability in the last episode, and if you attack someone without a casus belli, you take a -2 to your stability and a +2 to your war exhaustion. And you take -20 aggressive expansion with everyone for doing that. So, it's not as bad as breaking a truce, but it's still pretty bad and you don't want to do it. So that's why it's important to have a casus belli. Meanwhile, if we look here, and this is another thing I forgot to explain, but we're going to go over it real quick. What is the advantage of having a conquest casus belli over having a reconquest casus belli? I was going to wait until the war to explain this, but if we look here, and we look at the goal, if we mouse over it, it'll say take Aragon, war goal is to take Aragon. And then the next part is important, because this is going to tell you, when you go to war, what your goal, like what you're trying to accomplish by going, to war. When you're trying to do conquest, your goal is to take territory. So you're going to get less aggressive expansion, and it's going to cost, less than it would in another type of war for taking provinces and annexing people. Later on, when you pick up the imperialism casus belli, which is way further down the line at diplomatic technology 22, you will pick up the imperialism casus belli, which basically is better than conquest and reconquest. But I think reconquest might be better. I'm not entirely sure on those. But the point is, at the time being, we have this casus belli, and those are the effects that it gives for those. Now, if we go back to Granada here, and we look at the reconquest casus belli, we will notice that it is 25% aggressive expansion instead of 75% for declaring war on them and taking their provinces. Still 100% prestige and 100% diplomatic power costs, but only 75% costs compared to normal of taking any of their provinces and full annexation. So that means in the peace deal, if they were a bigger country, for example, it would be a lot cheaper to take their provinces from them in a reconquest war, so long as we had cores on the provinces that we were trying to take. Okay, so that being said, conquest is obviously the more inferior of the two, but it's the one that we have to use against Aragon because we haven't actually cored these provinces yet. And you notice in the name that, first of all, this is a conquest war against Aragon, and then this is a reconquest. So, it's in the name even. But anyway, we're going to unpause the game. We're going to let our troops produce that we started building last time. England still wants military access, and we're not going to give it to them because it doesn't suit our interests. I find the AI typically does the same thing, though they are fairly generous with military access. I think in most games of this nature, the idea of military access seems to be a very, suspicious one. Why would I give you access for your troops to move through my country if I didn't trust you implicitly? Well, the thing is, to declare war in this game, to declare war on someone for no reason, as we saw, is really bad for your country. You get stability hits and things of that nature. And generally speaking, if you have claims on people, they're probably not going to give you military access anyway. They might, but you get the idea. Military access is really not that big of a deal in this. But all the same, if it doesn't suit your interests, or theirs really, why bother accepting it in the first place? And just a note, it tells you this, that if you give it a month, it'll auto-decline anyway. So, today we're going to do a little bit of troop management and figure out how to, logistically deal with our country here. So as you can see, we've got our troops built here. You can see clearly that, these are infantry by their unit model. Whatever the most of a stack is, that is the model that will show. So as you can see, we've got a cavalry unit here. And it's just a nice little touch. And the models do change over time as you get to higher military technologies. So we want to get all these armies into this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to click over them and tell them to move in there. And this is actually something that they didn't even explain to me in the tutorial. You just mouse over, you can click drag, and then right click on the province you want to move them to. Now as you're doing that, If you mouse over provinces, you can see here it'll tell you the name, who owns it, terrain, which is important when we're actually fighting. It'll tell you if you're crossing a river, which is also important if you're fighting. But then the next number, the one you'll have to worry about most at peace, is the supply limit. I'm going to pause the game real quick while I explain this, because it's happening right now. And supply limit means that that's the maximum number of regiments that a province can support before your troops start to take attrition from not having enough supplies. And this goes in enemy provinces. In enemy provinces, you will always take attrition, but if your troops don't have enough supply on top of that, and generally supply is lower for your troops in other countries, you will take that additional attrition on top of everything else. So if we look here at this province has a 15 supply limit. Now, Portugal is moving through here with, let's see, about 17 regiments, but they're only actually 6,000. So it only counts the troops that are still alive and kicking when it comes to supply limit. So as you can see here, the supply limit is 15 on Soria, but the weight with Portugal's army, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, is 21. And if we look here, it tells us that we are suffering 4.4% attrition. So that means every month at the passing of the month, 4.4% of our army is just going to die. I don't know how many men that is off the top of my head. And then to actually reinforce that, it's going to be drawn from our manpower pool. So, considering we only make 256 a month, if we lost like 100 troops, that's half a month's income of manpower that we just lost from attrition, just from them retreating through our territory. So, in a lot of games like this, it might be a good idea to, blob up your troops and just send them in, larger stacks. But because of the way the supply limit works, you can't always do that, because you'll suffer massive amounts of attrition. On the other hand, sometimes you don't really have a choice, and you need to keep your troops together if you want to stand a chance. That being said, as you may have noticed, and even in our outliner, which, by the way, earlier, the outliner was showing, the troops being produced. This outliner is really just extremely useful, and you should always have it open, because it's going to tell you, absolutely vital information that you'll want to know basically at all times. But anyway, you can see here we've got our stack of 12 and our stack of 11,000 that we had earlier, but now we've got all these stacks of 1,000. So, how are we going to change that? Well, it didn't tell you this in the tutorial that I remember, and so I'm going to show you how to do it now. When you've got a large, stack, like we have 5 different stacks here, so what we want to do is combine them. So we'll get a little, wizard here, and here we have a couple of options. We can reorganize troops if we have 2 armies, but what we want to do is if we have this many troops, especially if we have like a bunch of 1,000 stack or 1 stack troops, we can just click this button right here, merge selected units, or you can just press G on the keyboard. So we're going to do that, and voila, we now have a stack of 15. Okay, so let's combine this other army here. So now we have 2 very clean stacks of 15, and that's right in accordance with our supply limit. Now, as troops die, it's important to note that as they die, your force, this will not go down unless a regiment is actually destroyed. And to actually destroy a regiment, it takes a lot of work. Even if it gets reduced to 0 men, a regiment still sometimes will not be destroyed. So, keep that in mind when you're in a war and you're fighting. We're going to unpause the game while this claim fabricates so that we can get some work done after I get done explaining this. But so keep that in mind as time goes on, because, if you lose a bunch of troops, but you still got the manpower to reinforce them, don't build new regiments, because these ones will reinforce, and they'll be cheaper. Okay, so we have a decision here that we have to make, and I'm gonna explain kind of a general mentality that I like to have, because I think it's useful. Of all of the different resources we have at our disposal, the 2 most important are our monarch points, our power, and our money. So the game basically becomes a balancing act of those 2 subjects. Now, if we look at this decision here, Land technology research is useless. Several prominent men in our country are pointing out that the path we are going when it comes to army research is utterly foolish and will amount to nothing. They demand that we stop the current approach and stick with what was good enough for our fathers. So if we say that they have a point, we're going to spend military power because we're reforming, the military in the way that they say to. So that takes, part of our military power. But if we ignore them, that makes us look, kind of stupid, I guess. And that's going to lower our prestige score. Now, if we look at prestige here, really it's just, giving us a bunch of small bonuses. Nothing, particularly inspiring on this list. At least not at, plus 20 like we have, which is out of 100. And when it comes to general strategies and what you should focus on when you're playing EU4 is these right here, technologies are perhaps the most important thing that you can strive to have. And when it comes to events, you always want to balance with your military, your power, losing only what you have to. And the reason for that is because you always want to be ahead in technology. Not just because, in military you'll have better troops, but if we look here, in diplomatic technology, being ahead of time in diplomatic technology gives, plus 20% trade efficiency, which is more or less, 20% better trade, just period, to the income. And then if we look here, we have the same deal with administrative technology. So that's going to be production efficiency plus 20% for being ahead. So what we need to worry about is balancing, using the monarch points that we have only when we absolutely need to, so that we can save up and get these technologies, especially because our leader is terrible. A 1-1-2, remember, it's 1 out of 6, 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, which is absolutely awful. Because that's how much we're making every month. We could be making, potentially, 5 more administrative power a month, and 5 more diplomatic power a month, and 4 more military power a month, which would get us these new technologies a lot faster. But because we don't have it, we have to rely on advisors instead, which cost, money. So we have to spend money to get power. But in the end, ultimately, in my opinion, and, you could argue against this, I suppose, but power is basically the most important resource you have in the game, with money right beneath it. And the reason power is so important is because of, the technology and the other things that you can do with those points, like reduce war exhaustion, or raise stability to stop rebels, and to you spend administrative power to add new provinces to your core nation. So, in this decision, we're going to take the prestige, because 50 military power, if we think about it, we only make 6 military power a month. So that's like 9 months of time it's going to take to regenerate that. That's going to put us 9 months behind in getting our military technology up, and we really just do not want that to happen. So we're going to take the prestige hit, and we're going to lose 10 prestige, which means we're going to lose, some of these bonuses that we had. But that's okay, because it's better to have the military power in the end, by comparison. One thing I haven't even touched on yet is the idea of ships and trade. But I'm not even going to bother with that right now. Any of the experienced players right now will be like, why haven't you just sent your ships on trading missions yet? Well, it's because I want to keep this as simple as possible for anyone who's new to the game. So just bear with me. We will get to that. I think after our war with Aragon, we will go into ships and things of that nature. Now, Aragon only has a fleet of 18 compared to us. But you have to consider that they have, actually they have another 10 ships patrolling. So, I don't know. We have, if we look at the composition, I guess we have more heavy ships in our fleet. So we could potentially win against them if we built more ships, but we're just not going to worry about it in this. Now, one thing I should mention is that if you go to war with someone and you haven't finished fabricating a claim, the claim will continue to fabricate during the war, and can potentially finish during the war, before you actually sign a peace agreement, which makes the province cheaper to get in terms of the war score, which we'll discuss when we actually start this war. But that being said, when you are at war with someone, you cannot start to fabricate a claim. So generally what you can do is when you're like halfway done with fabricating a claim, or even if you've just started fabricating a claim, you know, that might be the time that you want to go to war with someone. And we're just waiting for this claim to fabricate still. If we look here, still the only thing we can build is this Earth Rampart. So I think we're actually going to click that away for the moment and get rid of this disputed succession. Now, when you have a claim on a province, it's going to pop up this little banner here just to tell you that it's there. I don't particularly know why they did that, but and this is really interesting what happened. Aragon just changed their capital to Barcelona. I'll admit I'm not the most attentive when it comes to this to these news feed, if I can think of a way to name it. But sometimes you get really useful information out of it. Like, we just learned that Barcelona is their new capital, which they want because it's a 13 base tax province, so they get even more out of it. But that means we're going to be able to take Valencia in this war if we have a claim on it. And that's really good for us. So, let's see, what's in this? France's army is just sitting there in Navarra with Navarra. France is only allied with Hungary, which is good. It's never a bad idea to sometimes, when you're waiting for something like this core to finish, to go around to some of your more powerful neighbors and to see who their alliances are with. Especially if you're planning on going to war with them, of course. You know, deal with what's close to you before you deal with what's far from you. And generally speaking, it's good to have allies, like, you're not going to get allies generally that are touching your territory, with the exception of Portugal in this case. Or unless you're more powerful than them. Alright, we have finished fabricating that claim, so what we're going to do is we're going to fabricate another claim on Valencia. And if you notice here, real quick, when we fabricate claims, it's going to give 7.5 aggressive expansion. And it tells you how that's going to affect, you know, everybody who's actually, you know, going to know about that. So as we can see, at the very, very top, Aragon will have a negative 14 impact on their opinion of us if they find out that we're attacking them. And the same goes when we take provinces from them, because they're our rival, and they don't like us. So that means anything we do is going to make them like us even less. Okay, that being said, we're gonna start fabricating this claim on Valencia. Send him. Alright, let's take a quick look again. And remember, we're not worried about the naval combat in this. Not yet. We're going to go ahead and unpause the game. And then on the 28th of December, we will launch a strike. Now, one quick thing I want to mention is, say you're having supply limit issues. What you can do is there's this neat little button here, and it's S for short. Oh, we have another really bad event here. So the province of Galicia has problems. So they will lose all their trade power. Their goods produced goes down by 50%, local taxes go down by 50%, and local manpower goes down by 50%. Well, if we look at this province, it's not very good. It's a 4 base tax, so we do make some decent tax money off of it. The manpower is only 80, which isn't very good, and the trade power is not even 2. So, it's not that good. And the goods produced is only 0.9. So, not that that means anything to you if you're new to the game, but these aren't very high values, so we're not worried about it. Because if we look here, this is going to do all those effects for a year, so 12 months. But if we do this, it'll still do it for a year. We don't take as much of a penalty, but we lose administrative power, which is bad. I know it's only 5, but it's still, you know, that 5 could come in handy at some point. But also, the 75% chance of it spreading to another province is absolutely unacceptable. We cannot let that happen. So we're just gonna quarantine the port and let the people with the flu die. And that's the thing, you know, life was rough during this time period. We're at the late end of the medieval period. You know, we don't really use guns yet. But anyway, we are almost ready to start this war. And before we do that, we're going to pause on the day that will live in infamy in Aragon. If possible, always try to have a general in your armies. Because generals are going to enhance your, as we mentioned earlier in the series, generals are going to enhance your troops in a very significant way. Fire and shock helping directly with combat, maneuver helping with terrain and movement speed through provinces, and siege is going to help us take provinces faster if we have the option. That being said, if you mouse over this, or look in your military tab in your government, you can see at the very bottom there, well, just above the how much power you can save, it'll say 1 out of 1 liters. Certain technological ideas and traditions, and having more power projection, and even certain buildings can raise the number of liters that you can have. Now, what does that mean? Like with force limit, that's not a hard cap. That doesn't mean we can't have more than one general. But what it means is if we have more leaders than we have limit, then we're going to lose 1 point of military power per month that we have that. So if we have 2 out of 1 leaders, we're going to lose 1 military power every month to upkeep that. And for anyone interested, admirals count for this as well. I couldn't think of the word for that. for a boat leader, a boat general, if you will. But anyway, it is December 28th of 1446, and we are going to begin our conquest of Aragon. So we will declare the war. And if we look here, we can see that we are the attacker against Aragon in the Castilian conquest of Aragon. And next episode, we are going to cover war and how getting provinces works and everything of that nature. So make sure to stay tuned, and next time we will see some action for sure. So thank you for watching, and make sure to comment if I left anything out, and I'll see you on the next one.